Welcome back. Now, 7 people have been killed in Delhi in protests against India's controversial new citizenship law. Now, the violence erupts amid US President Donald Trump's first official visit to the country. Police used tear gas and grenades, but struggled to disperse the unrelenting crowds. The law eases the path of non-Muslims from 3 neighboring Muslim-dominated countries to gain Indian citizenship. This has led to accusations that Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party are undermining India's secular traditions. Meanwhile, President Trump and First Lady Melania visited the memorial site of India's independence hero, Mahatma Gandhi, to pay their respects. Washington and New Delhi have built close political and security ties. Officials say Trump's 2-day visit is a sign of their converging interests and finding a way to counter China's rise as a superpower. Let's cross now to my colleague, Neeha Poonia, our correspondent in New Delhi, India. Neeha, it certainly has been an interesting visit from Donald Trump, coming through, of course, at a time when it seems that politics is not just the only issue, but certainly domestic issues as well for India, which are playing out right in front of Trump's eyes.
Absolutely, and the violence we've seen play out now for 24 hours and counting has definitely cast a shadow on Donald Trump's first visit to India. It was supposed to be a historic state visit. Both leaders are claiming that the visit has achieved its purpose, but the background of this meeting between the two leaders has definitely been gruesome, to say the least. We have 7 deaths that have been confirmed. Just minutes ago, we're getting news that some journalists who were covering those riots have also been attacked by a mob in the northeastern part of Delhi, and the significance of this is that this is taking place just about 11 miles away from where Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi held those bilateral talks here in India's capital. And on Monday, when Donald Trump spoke, he mentioned how India is a country that's respected the world over because of its secular fabric. Here you have people from all faiths and religion that live next to each other, that worship next to each other without any kind of acrimony. But that's not what we're seeing today, because from the reports coming from on the ground, this appears to be, from the initial stages, a communal riot of sorts. You've got many people who are going from house to house, asking people if they're Hindu or they're Muslim. The Delhi police has been accused of not doing enough. You had the Home Minister also hold an emergency meeting, and the government is maintaining this is nothing but simply an attempt, a conspiracy, it's saying, to defame India during such an important state visit.
Neeha, the question then becomes, as well as the biggest democracy in the world, then questions being asked perhaps towards President Donald Trump, perhaps. Have we gotten any sentiment or thoughts from him with regards to some of the protests, some of these thoughts around what is happening in the area?
That's essentially what a lot of people are asking as well, because Donald Trump has not said anything at all, and these protests actually reached their peak on Monday evening local time, right before Donald Trump was slated to land in New Delhi from his visit at Agra. And he's been in Delhi now for over 24 hours, and he's not said anything about it, not on the joint press statement that was released a short while back after the two leaders held bilateral talks. But he is going to be holding a press conference. During the joint press statement, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump didn't take any questions from the media, a deviation from tradition, but Donald Trump says he will interact freely with the press at about 5 p.m. local time, which is in just about an hour and a half. So we might hear some comment from him, because it's very likely that an Indian journalist, if not an American one accompanying his delegation, will certainly ask him what his thoughts on these protests are.
And very finally then, Neeha, I suppose the question becomes, this plays out on a world stage, and as you said, yes, Donald Trump there. Narendra Modi is certainly one that has, just gotten some sort of ratification, I suppose, from the elections not so long ago, and now he faces an economy that continues to struggle along and meander its way through the global perspective. Growth is still a big issue, joblessness still a big issue there as well. Is he finding a way to navigate through all of this, or is he just perhaps playing the part and really just playing out his second term?
You know, it's interesting that you asked me this question just 6 months or so since he won that massive mandate in the 2019 general elections. And one of the first promises that Prime Minister Modi made was that he would fix the economy, because at the time that he won that re-election, unemployment was at a 4-decade high in India, and the economy was growing at its slowest pace in about 2 to 3 years. And I can tell you in the last 6 months that situation has not improved, it's only worsened, which is why many people said that the event, the pageantry event almost that we saw on Monday, where you had that massive gathering in Gujarat in Prime Minister Modi's home state, many were saying this was an attempt for Prime Minister Modi to seek a global validation that, look, here you have the world's biggest superpower endorsing Prime Minister Modi's governance, endorsing his regime in a way to say. But these protests have once again put the highlight on domestic issues that continue to plague his government. One issue that remains is the economy. It's growing at the slowest pace possible. This Friday we'll see GDP numbers come out again, and the numbers, the predictions are not looking good. It's expected to be less than 5%, and India just 2 to 3 years ago was the brightest spot in the global economy, but now the slowdown is bringing global growth down. So tough questions for Prime Minister Modi, not just on the economic front, but now also in terms of domestic governance and the law and order situation.
Yeah, you also get the sense that this is a fight back in some way as well against China, as we keep on mooting or showing towards as well. Then is there a sense that they're forming this pact particularly to fight off China? And in what way then? Are there sort of trade discussions? Are there ways of interacting that are slightly going to be different, you know, bases and the like? Is anything really changing?
It's tough to say if anything's changing, because in the last 2 years we've also seen India's bilateral relationship with the US deviate to quite an extent and deteriorate as well, because Donald Trump has repeatedly personally attacked Prime Minister Modi, saying that India is a tariff king, that they don't treat us too well. We didn't hear any of that on this visit, but like you said, we did hear some sort of convergence on the Indo-Pacific. Now, China's name was not explicitly taken, but then again, it never is at these kind of discussions. There was a reference to the Quad, which consists of Australia, Japan, India and the United States. It's a group of countries that had promised to get together to do more in the Indo-Pacific, to try and counter the presence of those countries who don't follow a rules-based order. Again, indirect dig at China. But that gathering has not taken place in many months. That group, many critics say, has fallen off by the wayside. But Donald Trump said he's committed to having another meeting of that group very soon, and also he said he's committed to India's growth in this specific region. But important to make this point here, India has always maintained that any kind of group that it's a part of, whether it's the Quad, whether it's an ASEAN grouping, it's never against a single country, and that's a very nuanced position that's important for India to take, because ever since the trade deterioration with the US, you had India turning towards China, which has now become one of its bigger trading partners. You've got a shared boundary that's 4,000 kilometers long. So these are all parameters that India needs to keep in mind and tread very carefully, while ensuring that it agrees with the US to quite an extent, but doesn't alienate its neighbor China.
Yeah, going to get very interesting, these talks, and it's tenterhooks really that they leave us on, and shaky ground indeed. Neeha Poonia, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate that. That's our correspondent out in New Delhi in India, giving us an update on that story. We'll continue to, of course, thrash it out as it continues. The biggest democracies in the world certainly meeting, converging upon New Delhi, trying to find a way to perhaps fight against China in some aspect or another. We'll continue to give you that story, of course, right here on SABC News.